I think we'll just start by each of the three of you telling us your name, like your preferred title for your career, and then where you're zooming in from this morning, and then I will hop to my questions. So Rachel, do you want to start?
Sure. So hi, everyone. My name is Rachel. I'm a graphic designer and artist. That pretty much encompasses what I do. And what else did you ask us to say?
Oh, where are you zooming in from this morning?
Oh,
I think it's just
Alaska.
perfect.
Yes.
Dahli, you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Dahli Durley. I am a photographer. I specialize in domestic portraiture. So think about like solo portraits, weddings, but I also do some commercial work. Currently, I'm the head of the photo and video department for a shoe company in Minneapolis, and that is where I am calling from.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric.
Good morning. My name's Eric Solomon. I am a video producer, editor, and storyteller. That's what I usually go by. And I make videos for a lot of personal brands and small businesses. And I am on from Huntington, New York today.
Okay. Good stuff. All right, we're just gonna go through our questions. They kind of cover a wide variety of topics.
Phil's going to join. He just
Okay,
I'm
great.
Going to send him the link.
Perfect. Thank you. Our first question is about your ideation and your creative process. And it is, how do you carry energy through an entire project and not just fizzle out once the initial spark of the idea has faded? So I know that a lot of us love making things, but sometimes it's hard to see it to the end. So what advice do you have for that? And we can go in any order. Just feel free to jump in.
I think my cat wants to jump in. I think she just wants to say hi really quick. This is Virgil.
Morning, Virgil.
She usually distracts me from my projects. I guess as I've been an artist and also an entrepreneur, something that I've had to do is recognize that I'm a little neurospicy. And so there are certain ways that I work the best. And so when you're working on multiple projects, sometimes it's really hard to block things together. But for me personally, it really helps that once I start a project, that the things in sequence that happen after that happen quickly. So for example, like if I'm going to ideate with someone, we're going to create mood boards, I like to shoot with them quickly. And then after we shoot, I like to flip the images as fast as I can and deliver it to them. If there's too much space in between, for me, I know I kind of lose steam. So it's really important to keep everything really tight together as much as I can.
Morning, Phil. Glad you're here. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. We're just going through our first question. And that is, how do you carry energy through an entire project and not just fizzle out? Like, how do you get all the way to the end? Oof. So you can jump in and go with that, or we can have Rachel or Eric share too. Dahli just shared her answer.
Okay, well, first of all, good morning. I apologize for being a little late. I thought it was a little early. It was just hilarious. The question, how to maintain energy throughout a project. I guess for everyone up here on the panel will have a different answer. My projects are typically 4-week turnaround for the average. And then on the short end, and maybe 8 weeks for the long end. So it is a long interaction. There's this 1 hour touch point with my client, a Zoom call. And I think from the very beginning in the pre-production phase, I always make sure that, for one, I'm pitching ideas that I'm excited about. And it took a long time to develop that I guess is discipline to not show too many ideas or just, focus on quantity, but rather quality. So I know for like worst case, the final idea in the pitch phase would be something that I am excited about. So I don't usually have that issue, to be honest. I think this might be an answer to a different question, but in terms of just how I approach creative work, it's more of a lifestyle for me. It took me too long to really see that from the moment I do my morning routines. So my wind down routines at night, there's this whole intentionality around just staying creative rather than just being creative for just a
Hmm,
project here or there. Yeah,
that's great. Thank you.
sure.
Rachel, do you want to go or?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So my projects also can be on the shorter side, depending if it's like a quick design project or a longer branding project. And of course, like, what does the branding project involve? Is it like a logo and a color scheme and all those items that are involved in an identity? Or is it like there's a website involved and there's like a whole fleshing out of like the entire brand? It really depends on what people need for their business. And I should mention too, I typically do work with small businesses. So like, as we know, the budgets can be on the lower end all the way up, depending on like where they are in their journey with their small business. So I really have to be flexible with people and what they need. And I think the way for me to stay motivated through those projects, especially when they do go above 8 weeks, it just depends. Like, sometimes a brand can take 8 weeks and a website's like another 4. And I also work full time somewhere else. So like, especially now, my time is really like, I have to really section out what's getting done and communicating that to the client. And for me, I'm like a huge list maker. Even like in my personal life, I love like having everything laid out. It just helps me stay focused through the day. And by having my projects broken down into these like bite-sized pieces, when I check in the morning, I can look ahead and see like, what am I working on today? That kind of keeps the train moving for me, instead of feeling like I'm in this cloud of abyss and like I'm like overwhelmed by how much there is to do. Because sometimes when you have a bigger project and there's so many steps, it can feel like there's a lot of weight. But by breaking it down into like sections, and then within those each sections like steps, and just making everything actionable, that's really what helps me stay excited and avoid feeling the overwhelm of the project.
Good advice.
And my answer is pretty short. I think when you really, or when you pick the right career and the right job and you love what you're doing, um, I, I mean, not that I never lose energy or interest in the project, but I like the whole process. So my energy stays up and my interest stays up because I just enjoy what I'm doing.
That's good. That's good advice too. Okay, our next question is, what do you think is visually distinct about your work and how did you find that style? I'm sure that in such a competitive field, it can be important to stand out with a unique brand and vibe and feeling for your work. So, what do you think that thing is for you and how did you come upon that? Any order.
I'll go first on this one. I like this question. So as an artist, I love to do things by hand, and that really, I think, helps me connect with the work by like using a pencil instead of like, I know a lot of people like to jump right to the computer and that works really well for them. Maybe I'm just old. I don't know. I love to have like paper in front of me, or like go outside and like find things in my garden that are tactile and kind of incorporate physical items into my work. I think that just helps me stay grounded with what I'm doing instead of feeling like I'm just on a screen all the time. And I don't know, I just feel like I need to like be brought away from the screen in order to be effective on the screen, if that makes sense. So I like to try to find a way to incorporate that into every project that I do.
For me, I was really lucky. My first job was editing trailers and TV commercials for movies, for Hollywood movies. So I learned from some of the best people in that niche of the film industry how to tell a story, take a 2-hour movie and tell the story in 2 minutes. I'm old too, Rachel. So this was back in the early 90s, back when nonlinear was literally film. And it was a great way to learn. But I've carried that film trailer style editing. I tried to throughout my projects and gather as many different perspectives and B-roll and interviews on whatever the subject, creating a video about, and weave those all together in a way that tells the story very quickly, but is always cutting between different perspectives and different B-roll shots of the subject. You're muted.
Oh, Dahli, you're
Sorry.
muted.
Sorry, Virgil's going crazy over here, so I didn't want to subject out to that. I'm kind of on the same wavelength as Eric. We're telling stories, and so for me, my medium, especially with still photography, is how do you tell that story, but in a moment. And so I realized that I really liked what I was doing and where I was at when my clients were feeling very connected with me. At times, especially with what Eric and I do, because we're working with real people in real time, like people come with their own, insecurities and fear. And like, that's a lot of time you're spending with like someone like me and Eric focusing on you. Like, think about that. Like, how often in your life do you have someone just looking at you, staring at you? And so what I really enjoy and where I feel connected with my work is being able to create a safe space for someone to exist in that, to feel comfortable, to then elicit emotion, story, and then to capture that in a moment. So I knew I was on the right path to what I did when I felt connected, and also my client felt connected as well. In our work, when you're an artist, there's that fine line between creating things that you feel good about, and then if you're trying to make money, right? Like you want your client to also love it. So there's that fine line of finding that. And so mine was just both of us being stoked and feeling like, yeah, we told the story of you being in love on your wedding day, having like a GQ kind of like sassy moment in your shoot, and you feel strong and empowered. If you feel good, I feel good.
Yeah, I wanted to go last because this is particularly a really difficult question for me. A little background really quick. I was trained as a photographer, videographer, camera person. That's where I started. And somehow I ended up in motion graphics. I did traditional art school, went to the Art Institute in Miami. And for a very long time from that moment I started school to, I would say midway in my career, like maybe 10 years after, I struggled to find out what was this thing that I can do to make my work stand out, to really make it mine. And it was only until a performance review of one of my, full-time jobs I was working at a studio, they told me, I asked the question, so what makes my work different? And scared of the answer, but I'm glad I asked the question. It was nothing that I expected. The director told me that they could feel emotion by watching whatever it was that I did. And I was a generalist. I wasn't a master at any one particular skill set, like 3D animation, 2D animation. I couldn't sketch good. So I was this oddball, but this guy, his name is Ian, he allowed me to realize that the storytelling part of it, this little way of stringing images, or like Rachel, like picking up, I don't know, leaves from the yard or stones. I can take anything and make people feel some way with it, like tell a story with it, inanimate objects. And that was the moment I realized, you know what? Yes, I'm gonna have the coolest portfolio and all this kind of stuff. And I'm gonna have, the wider range of depth that any one designer really wants. I may not have that, but having the ability to move people with story, I think differentiates me. And that was the moment I came alive and kind of got more confident in as a designer slash artist. So in the short answer, I would say the ability to move people. Like there's always this little feeling to my work. That's what I aim for these days. And I would say by extension, if you're a student, you're listening to this, it's okay to not know what that differentiating thing is. If it doesn't come quickly, like just keep going at it, keep exposing yourself to different disciplines, different nuances in the craft, and then ask people like, hey, what do you like about my work? It's a really tough question, but they will give you the honest answer, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's great. If we can't see it ourselves, asking other people is the next best thing.
Amanda, before the next question, I just want to pick up on something Phil said. I think that's so important for students to hear, that it's really okay to not know at this point. You're young. Like, don't put that kind of pressure on yourself. Just do what interests you now, and trust that the thing that lights you up, if you don't know it yet, you'll discover it. I Phil is a great story. I didn't know that about you, Phil. Like, it took a while. And Phil,
It's
Amanda, and
frustrating. It was frustrating.
yeah, Phil and Amanda and I met with this group, sort of a mastermind full of people in their 30s, 40s, 50s who are still figuring it out and still trying to identify that thing that makes them unique. So don't put pressure on yourself. It's okay to not know what you want to do the rest of your life.
I mean, I totally feel that as well. Like my background is I have a BA in marketing, then I actually have an MBA, and I was working in the hardwood lumber industry doing international exports into Southeast Asia and China. And it wasn't until I was 30 that I actually started my photography business. And I had a like untraditional route, which was I taught myself photography, but sometimes you don't know until you do things, right? So like I thought that I wanted to be this business person, and then and later in life I realized it's because that's what everybody else wanted for me, and it's not necessarily what I wanted for myself. But it wasn't until I lived it and I realized, oh, I actually really hate this, that I was able to make that change. And then it went from hating business to liking photography and carrying a camera around with me all the time and shooting all the time and figuring out, oh, I like shooting people. I don't like shooting, still life necessarily. Like you're always on, you're totally right, Eric. And you're always discovering things about yourself. So you just have to be open to that discovery.
That actually leads really great into our next question. And that is, how did you find opportunities and clients early on in your career?
I started with a job, so I didn't have to find clients. When I became freelance, I networked. It's just about the people and getting them to give you a shot. I mean, the world is so different now with the technology and the tools you have available. Money is rarely an obstacle to having the tools to do a job. So you may have to do work for free at first to show people you can do it. You don't have to tell people you did it for free. Tell them this is what you charge and this is what the work is, and then they'll say, all right, somebody else hired them, I guess I'll hire them too. It's just do the thing you want to do if you want to have your own business doing it.
I think that's part of the experience of your work, right? So there's part of it where the deliverable that you're giving your clients is technically good. It gets done what your client needs to get done, but really it's the experience of you. So I totally agree. Like when you're networking with people, if people like you and they know what you do, they will want to work with you. And a saying I have, and I will edit this because I know we're in front of people, but something I like to say is people don't want to give money to an a-hole. They just don't. And so what I mean by that is people want to make sure they like you. Like you could be maybe not the best technically at what you do, but if you can get the job done enough and they like you, people are more likely to want to work with you, give you a chance, have a relationship with you, and pick you over someone that they don't know.
Yeah. That's great advice. I like to work with people I like.
Yeah, I think we all do, right?
I actually think about that in like broader spectrum terms too. Like, what coffee shop am I going to go to? Like, which one do I have the best experience at? Which one has the barista that's the most friendly or like understanding or what up? Like, just someone you vibe with basically. So I think like that kind of applies to everything. And it's something that like, it seems so obvious, but then like once you start getting into your own business and you find that like they would say like your people will find you. And I think that's really true. Like whatever kind of energy you're emitting to people, they can read it. And
Yeah.
you know, those people want to work with you if you guys are similar, basically.
Mhm.
Yeah.
In a
Love
similar
that.
vein, you guys, the people who change my oil are the nicest guys on the planet. They are so friendly every single time. I look forward to getting my oil changed. Who says that? Like they have taken their craft and whatever they do, and they do it in their way, and they're so nice. It's Grease Lightning, by the way, for anybody who's local. You should go there. But it's very powerful. It's very powerful.
Yeah, I'll echo the same thing. The likability, just all of my professors at art school told me that same thing. Like, don't focus on the money, just focus on being hungry and passionate about what you do. Like, try to just be really good at it and try to get along with people. Like, try to be likable, you know? For me, like a very specific thing I was doing, I came from Barbados to Miami, was a completely different world, culture shock, everything. And because in my case, I never knew which semester was my last because of the finances, I would cold call at that time and mail the studios in the Miami Beach area. So basically, it was volunteering to do whatever they wanted to do. I just needed to get a little experience, and they were so nice. I mean, it was shocking how open minded the executive producers were to just having this random dude in to charge batteries or to fold t-shirts or to sit in the be a fly on the wall just to learn, take notes, run errands. I guess in a nutshell, like develop this hunger and thirst for whatever it is you want and just go after it with this open mindset that money might not be the result, but the experience and the connections, I think those are the valuable things you'll get volunteering for free. That was
Yeah,
my story. Yeah.
exactly. And when you're getting out there and you're more exposed and more people know about you, the more people that know, the more opportunity you have to make an impression.
Yes.
I think that's where tools like Instagram and social media is really important. And I found that when I first started, how I got a lot of my work and actually how I continue to get my work is when I'm shooting things and I'm tagging other people and they share it, then you are exposed to all these other people that have reference points to you. So like maybe they don't know you, but whoever tagged you, they know that person and they trust them. And then when you are doing higher ticket services, for example, let's say you're shooting a wedding, that's if you're charging a good amount of money, people want to make sure that they trust you. But if they don't know you, but they know that you shot their best friend, they trust their best friend. And so that trust then transfers over to you. But then that all happens on Instagram through a tag, right? Like people aren't going to tag you maybe if they don't like you, you know? So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think
Amanda?
too, jumping in, I know it's not my panel, but tell people what you do. Because if you like, sometimes when we start something new, like we kind of want to keep it a secret because we might be insecure about it or we're not sure or whatever. But like telling people what you do is the first step, because then when they need somebody to do that thing, they'll remember, oh yeah, didn't Amanda say that she does this kind of thing? And so then it starts to spread, but you have to put it out there that you do the thing, and maybe you don't feel comfortable right away, but eventually you got to tell people, because otherwise it's really hard to get hired if nobody knows that you do that thing.
Amanda, I don't want to take up more time with this, but maybe you could pass along to your class what Rory has taught us.
Yes.
That revenue comes from reputation, and your reputation comes from the results that you deliver times the number of people that know about it, your reach.
Yeah.
So reach times results equals reputation, reputation equals revenue.
Yeah. Eric has just distilled a multi-$1,000 membership into 30 seconds. So thank you for that, Eric. That definitely, I'll try to find a podcast that like encapsulates the whole BBG mentality and pass that on.
Yeah.
Our next question is, what is one skill you wish you gained earlier on? It can be a technical skill. It can be, Any skill.
I saw this question and I was like, oh, I have a great answer. Well, I think a great answer for this. Dressing better. People will judge you by the way you look. They will. And I did not pay enough attention to that for a long time.
I did not expect that answer, Eric. Thank you for sharing it. It's something I wouldn't have thought of.
Because I didn't always look this good.
You look fantastic today.
Thank you.
Love it. I would say speaking up sooner. Naturally, I prefer to be behind the camera. I've gotten a lot more confident being in front of the camera, like Zooms on stages to some degree. But being a fly on the wall or being just quiet in the shadows is just default for me. And a lot of people are like that, I find, especially in the creative professional world. A lot of artists, they prefer not to speak. So I think just even sharing ideas in the room, giving input, finding a way to find your voice, to give input, to give even constructive criticism, just speaking up sooner. I think that's something that I wish I did way sooner and developed this art of just getting comfortable speaking and finding my voice. Yeah.
I wish I would have been more organized sooner. Organized on a lot of levels, but I think when you're first starting out and like, let's say you don't have as big of a workload, it's really easy to like juggle a couple projects. But then when you really start getting busy, right, you hit that spot where you're like, yes, I've made it. Like I have a bunch of clients at one time. Guess what? There's a lot that goes into all these clients because it's not just you go in and just do the project. There's like all these things you have to do before, right? Like you have these prepping with them calls, you have mood boards, you have conversations, you have to get props, you have to like sometimes track down models depending on the project. Then you have to shoot and you have to make sure you have all the people and the location and the permits. And then you have to edit and then whatever for one project. But then you're doing that with 10 projects and you're like, wow, did I get everybody to sign a contract? Did this person pay their invoice? And so, I mean, I have that in place now, but I'm very much someone that I learned by putting my hand on the stove top. Usually it's both hands and my face is how I learn. But you know, I didn't really have anybody teaching me. So that's something I would have known, but some things you just don't know until it happens to you, or like maybe someone will tell you, but it doesn't mean anything until you also have your hand on the top of the stove and you're like, oh, that's why I should say in my contract, like, if you get hurt while you're shooting with me, not my fault. That didn't actually happen with me, but you know.
I feel the same way. I'm like a learner by doer, and like I'll read something or like someone will tell me something. I'm like, okay, got it. And then it's out the other ear. But then the second I do it myself and I live it, it's like the first time I've ever heard it before almost. I don't know. So I'm the same way. I don't know what that is. Maybe we're a strange breed of people, but I think maybe it's more common than not. I don't know. I
think
love advice, but I learn better when I
thinkers.
experience it.
Right, we're like ideators. We see the big things. Sometimes it's the details are harder.
I'm guilty too, Rachel. Guilty.
Great, thank you.
Amanda, I'm sorry. Can I add one more thing? This,
Of course, yeah.
it supersedes everything, and I can't believe I missed this. But the number one thing I wish I knew that I wish I did sooner was just to learn business. And it happened to be one of the biggest pieces of advice I got before I graduated from school. I actually had a professor who said, "Hey, whatever you do, do not marry someone who is a creative-minded person. Marry someone." He was so clear, and it was funny. It was hilarious. But then I grew to see, oh, I see what he was saying. You know, you need to be savvy in business to some degree to really complement. If you want to be a creative professional, it can't be all this and no business. And that was something that my wife and I, of course, I married someone who was creative, and then I didn't follow that advice, but it shows the lack of, you know, business savviness. We burnt out a couple of times. So that's one mistake I would tell anyone, like, just, even if it's not attractive, it's the boring stuff. Learn how to balance your books, learn how to take someone who's good at business out for coffee or dinner or something, and just learn some tricks from them from early.
Yeah, 'cause it's really easy to fall in that trap, especially when you're first starting out and you only have a couple gigs. And then if you don't have those systems in place, when you get really busy, when you are making money, it is very easy to get in trouble. And starving artist is a real thing. I'm sure we can all attest that. We all have friends that have struggled or like, I don't know why I can't make it. And Phil, I agree with you. Part of it is that they don't have like the business part locked down. And something I would also add before we move on is not charging enough. So there is also that fine line when you're starting out, right? Like, it is natural that you're not going to charge as much because maybe your portfolio isn't as broad, you're getting into the swing of things. It is true that if you are at a lower price point, that you might be more enticing to people, but then there's that trap of, well, who are you enticing to? You know, and I think, Eric, you said this earlier, but like, there's a lot of money out there. And if someone wants to work with you, they will pay you for it. But oftentimes when you're starting out, if you are not securing your work, it is very easy to keep your prices low for a long time, because maybe there's this subconscious thought of like, well, I don't know. I mean, I did okay, but if I'm not charging that much and my work's not that great, then it's fine. Like, maybe people don't say it like that, but I've run into people that have had similar thoughts. But that also doesn't pay your rent. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you're always navigating, you're always reassessing, but it's something I wish I also would have done earlier, was charge a little bit more sooner, I guess. Yeah.
So
Great
that makes
advice.
me think of an experience. Do you care if I add like a little
Go for it.
in
Go
here?
for it.
Okay. So when I was right out of college, my uncle asked me to paint like an oil painting of him and my aunt, and it was like nearly life size. It was huge. And I think I charged him like, I don't know, $800. It was crazy. It was just like a number that seemed like a lot to me, but like now knowing like how many hours go into it and like how expensive oil is and all this stuff, I should have charged more. But my uncle is amazing. He sort of like just, I don't know. So he would send me a check in the mail. And then like every few weeks, he kept sending me more checks, and they were all like way more than I had asked. And he would write these notes to me that said like, "Dear Rachel, I hope the painting is going well. I've heard that like of the starving artist thing, and I don't want that to be for you." So he would just like continue to send me money for this painting. And like, it sort of made me realize like, yeah, like you're right. I do deserve to get paid for like these hundreds of hours that I've put into this painting. And like, if he wouldn't have paid me more, I would have gotten charged, or I would have charged him like 10 cents an hour, like for, you know, or whatever. I don't do math. Okay. So like, to take it for yourself. But anyway, like it just like made me realize like I do have value. What I'm doing is important. The right people are gonna pay me what I deserve, you know. So anyway, that's just like a memory I think of still to this day, like 15 years later, where I like, you know, I'm charging a project and I'm like, okay, this is important. And yeah, it was just like a really great kind of wake up call for me when I was starting out, I guess. So anyway, so that was just kind of tag along with what Dahli said.
Absolutely. I'm going to add in 2 thoughts, and then I'm going to go to the next question. One, have a significant other who has health insurance. I would not be able to do what I do working here part-time and freelancing the rest of my life if I did not have a partner who had health insurance. And so not that you're going to like put that on your dating app, like must have a 9 to 5, but it's worth thinking about. I tell my husband that if he wants to quit his 9 to 5, he needs to give me at least 18 months in advance notice. And then also, if you are looking for another significant other, picking someone who is incredibly supportive of you and your creative pursuits, because it just makes the whole thing more fun. It makes the whole thing less stressful. You need to have your biggest cheerleader in your household. Or, I mean, you don't have to, but it makes it a whole lot better. If your biggest cheerleader is in your household, it's a lot harder. I talk to people who are like, oh, my significant other doesn't really value this, or they say, where's the money, or, you know, whatever. That's hard. That's not fun. So choose wisely. Choose wisely. Okay, we're gonna take a left turn here, and the question is, how do you think location affects your work? Does where you live affect your success or your ability to get clients? And then also kind of maybe a caveat to that is like, how much of your work can be done remotely? And I know that as a person who has always lived in the Midwest, and I feel like a lot of creative work happens on the coast. I'm really interested to hear your answers to this one as well.
I dream of living like on a coast, you know, so I can like walk out of my awesome house and like be at the beach or in the woods immediately and like get my inspiration there. But I think like that just sort of sets you up to think like, oh, I need to have the perfect scenario to create. And I think that's a trap. It's like doing all these preparation steps, thinking like, if I could just like have the perfect room and the perfect lighting and all these things, then I'll really be able to create. But I don't think that's true. I think like if you can create something with what you have, that's far more important than like having the perfect ideal scenario. Because I've gotten stuck in that trap before and I was in the perfect place and I didn't do anything. So it's like, it really, I think comes from within, like, how do you start essentially? Like, where do you get that from inside yourself?
Oh gosh, can I piggyback on that real quick? You just touched a nerve, Rachel, because for far too long, it's embarrassing how long it was. So, really short, left Miami Art School, was fortunate to get a job in Hollywood, California, working with post-production studios, feature film. And all of these studios had catering, they had mood lighting, they had scented candles, and it was just a good setup for me to fail because I thought that I needed all that to really, especially the candles. When I left LA, came back to my Florida, all of my studios that I worked with, even at home for freelancing, I would have a candle. I thought, oh man, I need to set the mood right to, get the vibes up, and do some crazy stuff. And it's such a trap. So just be careful of that. I'm glad you said that. Nobody talks about it, but it's really here. For me, as a digital creator, location is not an issue, Amanda. This is 3 years of being my wife and I, fully digital nomad. So we've been working regions in Colombia, uh, Guatemala, Mexico, Caribbean, South Florida. And I guess in this day and age, depending on what the job is, you don't have that issue at all. If you're in production, if you're more a cinematographer, filmmaker, you maybe want to be thinking more strategically about your like location. And even that said, one time it was, you have to be in LA, you have to be in New York. But no, you could be in Atlanta, you could be in Texas. There's all that shifts over time. So depends on what your goal is, your industry is, and depends on what your deliverables are. Like for me, it's all digital assets. So not an issue.
So while we're talking about makes me think of a book. I can't see it on my shelf, but I know I have it somewhere. It's called, has anyone read the book called Art and Fear? It's like not a super cute cover, in my opinion, but it's like a great book. And it's really small. It's like 5 by 7
Sounds good.
inches. It's like 100 pages, and it just like gets right to the heart of like what we're talking about like you just need to do your work. Like some
Yeah.
days everything you make is terrible, but you have to make it. Like you just have to get through those days so you can make your good work. It's like, I don't know. It's like the most straightforward message for anyone who's like creating that. I don't know. I'll see if I can find it and send it to you, Amanda, but I think
Okay.
it's called Art and Fear. Art and Fear.
Yeah, if or I
Highly
can
recommend.
pick it up on Amazon and then ask our librarians to order it for campus.
Yeah, it's so good.
Nice.
For me, location, I've been lucky that I've been in New York my whole life, and I never gave location a lot of thought. But essentially wherever you live, it's where you're beginning, and you're going to begin with the people you're surrounded with, the people you know. So where you are is where you start. And there are great people everywhere, and there are the need for things everywhere. So, just begin where you are. And if you want to do something that is only done in certain parts of the world, or is done at a higher level in certain parts of the world, and you want to work at that level, you may have to change your location for that. But the technology makes so many things virtual now that it's not as important as it used to be in those places. But it goes back to that who you know part of this discussion. So you're going to meet people you are surrounded with. Amanda, Phil, and I are from different parts of the country, but we all met at this thing we decided to join. That's another way to meet people from around the country. Join something where you'll have the opportunity to network with people.
I would say, because the original question was, does location dictate your work? I would say it's twofold. So, I mean, for what I do end up traveling a lot. The location matters because I don't do a ton of in-studio stuff. It is the environment of whatever my client needs me to be at. Like, are we in their home? I live in Minneapolis. So this weekend, like, I was in Baltimore for a shoot, and then I also ended up being in DC. Or, like, hey, we're getting married in France. How do we get you there? So, right now I'm quoting out a wedding in Burgundy next year at a chateau. So, in that sense, it does matter because it's part of like the storytelling part of it. I don't think that you have to live in those places. We live in an age where we have planes, trains, and automobiles. So, for me, it is more helpful to live in a bigger metropolitan area with like an airport that is helpful. I did live in La Crosse for some time, and that was really annoying going to that airport to get to, like Chicago or Minneapolis to these places. So in that way, it's easier. But I think that it's not necessary. But for me, I'm challenged more creatively when I'm surrounded by other creatives. And so I found that when I moved and I lived in DC for a while, or I was living in Phoenix for a while, or doing, digital nomad stuff like Phil, the more people you meet, the more that you get challenged as a person. Or for me, like a change of location does reset my mind and how I view the world. So I don't think it's necessary, but I think it is helpful.
Awesome. Okay, we are almost to the end of our class time, so I want to give you all like 45 seconds. What's the question we didn't ask you that we should have asked you? And what do you want us to know?
Okay, I'll go first. I think there is something I was never told. I had to figure this out. And I'll tell you, you're going to be always tempted to compare yourself to a different artist in many ways, right? And I'm even going to start the list because it happens naturally, right? So I would say when that temptation comes, just have a way of dealing with it. Like self-talk. It sounds weird to say this, but talk to yourself. Tell yourself the right stuff. And this is all on the foundation of you having this unique ability. There's something unique about you and your work that will it would express itself in different ways. But having that anchor that, hey, what I have to offer is unique, even if you're still trying to excavate it and really say what that looks like or what that feels like, you have to believe that that is there because we all created different. We all come from different places in the world, different backgrounds, different stories. And that alone, because you have a different story, it means you have a different perspective, a different makeup. So tapping into that, like be in hungry pursuit of finding that thing. And it may not be, oh, I can draw a certain way, or I can paint a certain way, or take pictures a certain way. It might be something deeper, like I'm really about details, or I have a way of connecting with people that is kind of abnormal. Like I can walk in a room and sense what people are feeling. I'm very empathetic. Something on that deeper level, that's your secret. That's your superpower. So dig for that and let that always dictate your value, how you see yourself, because then it begins to flow out of you and you move different. That's what I would say.
Thank
I
you.
love that. I feel like that's advice for me even right now. Like, again, like, you know, sometimes you hear something like 5 years ago and you're not ready to hear it, and then you hear it at a different time, and like your journey has been like this or whatever, and
Yes.
whatever moment it is that you hear something, if you're receptive, you'll hear it in a different way. So thank you for that. I like
Yeah.
that.
Anybody else
Dolly, do you
last
want to go?
last parting thoughts and words? Oh, go ahead, Eric. Sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, I was going to say, Dolly, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. I would say, what I hear, at least in photography, when people come up to me, they'll say, well, there's thousands of photographers. Like, why would I choose to do this? So it's kind of, piggybacking off of what Phil said too. Well, it's like, yes, that is true. Are there thousands of photographers, millions in the world? Yes, but there is only one of you. And that might sound really trite or like cliche, that we're all these little special birds, but like we actually are. There is only one of you with your own experiences and your own experience of like what it's like to work with you. So don't let numbers scare you off. Just go out and do it. Also, like, if you're scared of trying something, your fear will stop you from actually knowing, right? Because if you're like, well, I don't know if I should do photography full time, and then you don't do it, then you'll never know. But at least if you try, even if you fail, it doesn't mean you should never do it, but like there's always something to learn. So I guess it's two-part, like just, be yourself, try, and if you fail, try again or do something else. It's your life. You can do whatever you want.
That's
I
great.
think fear is a
this
really
whole-
good guide. Like if you're afraid of something, that's the thing you need to do. At least that's what I've experienced. Like when I shy away from something, it's because there's something deep down that I'm like, I should try it, but I'm afraid. So it's like, well, then that kind of like helps me guide through like things to try, I guess.
This whole class is based on the Clifton Strengths Finder. And so we all know our top 5 strengths, and we learned that like only 1 in 340,000 people have the same top 5 as us. And so that we can only do things in the way that we can do them. And it's not able to be replicated because it's just us. So that's like a perfect message to drive home with this specific group. So thank you. Eric, and then Rachel, did you give yours too, or?
I don't think I did, but I guess if I had to, I would just say that, like if you don't know what your like niche is or what your like defining quality is of your work, I'd say like don't be afraid of that. Like just keep making things, just keep trying, just keep like pursuing. And then even when you finally think you know like who you are, a year later, your life has gone through a whole new 365 days of like life, and things can happen and you can change. So it might be that like last year you knew that you were exactly like this, but next year you might be a totally different person and you might be creating in a totally different way. So I think like accepting change and just like welcoming change is the best way to continue to grow. Even if like I've seen artists that have like a really specific style, and that's all they do. And I mean, that's fine if that's what really fills them up, but like to see some artists like kind of like ebb and flow between different things and like experimenting, I think that's the best way to really like find who you are and just not to be afraid of the change that may come, not to feel like stuck in one place.
Awesome.
They're all great things. And again, Amanda and Phil, this is going to sound familiar, but and it's along the theme of what you're saying. First thing is uniqueness. And I forgot the word you used, Amanda, the 5 things that
Oh,
people
Clifton Strengths Finder is what we did, our 5 strengths.
Yeah. I mean, in brand builders, we're taught to figure out our uniqueness. What is it that we do differently than anyone else? And again, it can take years, it can take decades. Like, don't put pressure on yourself. If you know the 5 things that are unique to you now, that's great, but they'll change, to Rachel's point. And the other thing is whether you are looking for a job or looking to get hired for a project, whether you're an independent contractor or, whatever your creative, wherever your creative skills lead you, people will hire you because they have a problem and they're looking for you to solve that problem. So the work is not about you and what you do and your talent. The work is about how you and your skills help your client solve their problem. So we often get wrapped up in our own heads about our skills and our talents and what we do well. And, people are hiring us because they love our work, but it's not about us and it's not about our work. It's about how we can perform a service for them and help them solve a problem that they have. So it's not about you.
That is a great ending point, and I love that. I'm gonna take a picture of all of us here really quick, because right, Dahli, then we're gonna tag each other.
Yeah,
And,
I was just about to ask, but if you're gonna do it,
that work, I'll take it, and then I will
give
send
me a
it to
break.
everybody. So just give us your biggest smiles, students. If you want to stick your heads out from your computers, that would be so you can, or not, your choice. All right, 1, 2, 3. Awesome. All right. Panelists, thank you for your time and sharing your wisdom so generously with us. I will be in touch with you after this. Students, I will get the recording up in our Blackboard shell as soon as I can.
And if any of your students have video related questions or anything they want to follow up with me about, I'm happy to have you share my email. Just put Amanda Student in the subject.
Okay, awesome.
Same with
Awesome.
photo. Hit me up on Instagram.
Yes, I will. They have your websites. And so I'll probably just have them go that way, but I can post emails or Instagram stuff too. So
Cool.
awesome. All right. Thank you all so much. I will see. I mean, Rachel, I see you in